I want to go. I can't go
Yeah.
because me and Jesus have, and that was a growing pain for me
Yeah.
to be like, I really want to do this thing,
Yeah.
but I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like I'm growing and maturing as I continue to be
Yeah.
more disciplined. But being more disciplined sometimes means telling all your friends no and then hearing
Yeah.
the funny stories later
Yeah.
that you wish you could have seen,
Yeah.
but you didn't. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Broom podcast. Classic setup again today. It's me, my beautiful wife, Amanda. And shout out to Miss Amanda today. The day this episode is airing is her 27th birthday.
I thought I was turning 28 like all year long.
Yep. That's how
Surprise,
it
surprise.
gets.
I get an extra year. So
I feel like once you get above like 22, 23,
yeah.
you kind of just stop keeping up with it a ton. Like I have to do
Yeah.
the math every year.
Just let me know when my 30th is
Yeah.
coming and I'll celebrate that one.
But happy 27th
Yeah.
birthday.
Thank
And so in honor of our 27th, your
Right.
27th
you.
birthday,
We are one.
we're doing an episode today called Growing Pains, talking through some more lighthearted conversation and stories about things that we've learned.
I'm going to try to
Um,
keep you lighthearted.
I'm going to try it's tough for me. But no, we're going to talk about just some different stories, some different things that we've learned throughout our life, throughout our marriage, throughout our personal lives, things like that. Have quite a few funny stories for you guys
Yeah.
today, I think. We were kind of rehearsing and going over it last night, and we're up pretty late laughing.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited for today's episode, but happy birthday to you
Thank you.
again. And to all of our listeners, send us a DM, email, comment below. Happy birthday, DJ
Oh.
Panda.
Yeah.
So send her a gift. Send her an Amazon gift card,
Right.
Venmo, Cash App. No, just kidding.
Right.
But for real.
I'll tag it below.
Yeah. But no, happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
We wanted today's episode to be more lighthearted and just kind of hang out, talk about some growing pains that we've experienced through. We have a couple different categories. We're going to go through marriage, ministry, parenting, relationships with each other, or like with friends, and then our relationship with Jesus, and just some growing pains and some examples of things we've learned.
Yeah.
And so, going right into it, let's start with marriage right here.
Okay.
What is a growing pain that you have experienced? We're coming up. We're a few months shy of 8 months being married now.
8 months, 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Sorry, 8 years being
yeah.
married.
Almost 10 years together. You
That's crazy.
posted that video that you made,
Mhm.
and somebody commented on it, and I was like, there's a lot of life together.
Dude, 10 years. And it's like 10, not that in certain decades aren't more or less important than others, but we met at 17 and 18. And so here we are about to be 27 and 28.
Yeah.
Like,
We're
that's a lot.
We've probably changed who we are
Yeah.
multiple times.
And that's even when we started dating. We actually met for the first time 12 years ago,
Yeah.
which is almost half our life.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever met you, I think we were sophomore and junior in high school.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Little babies.
I know. It's so exciting. But yeah, 8 years of marriage, coming up on almost 8 years.
Yeah.
What's a growing pain that you've learned? Tell us about it.
I think one that I have, and I'm going to go first because mine is, I said I was going to keep you from being super heavy, but mine is like right off the bat kind of heavy.
Let's hear it.
Is our current season and our marriage.
Okay.
We've been married 7 years now, together almost 10. We have brought a child into this world,
Yep.
and our relationship looks very different now.
Yep.
I would say that our marriage, to be completely open and honest and vulnerable, has been on kind of like a harder season of life for us. And I say that, and I'm always afraid immediately everybody's like, they're gonna get divorced, they hate each
Right.
other,
Right.
they're just constantly fighting. and
Right. Right.
and that's like, that's not it. Like, we still love each other. It's just like, it's not as like natural and easy
Yeah.
as it has
It's taking a
been.
lot more like intentional effort
Yeah,
right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of that has to do with, like, we can't just have arguments or discussions whenever we need to. Like, they have to be kind of planned out because
Mhm.
we have a baby.
Mhm.
And we're a lot more stressed and drained
Right.
because of that child, and because of the world that we live in with, like, finances and kind of the own stressors that we put on ourselves and
Yeah.
everything. But one of the main growing pains in our marriage that I've seen is, like, throughout every hard season that we've had, like, I think a lot of people, and even when it's super hard, I can tell myself or feel like in those, like, lies that I can tell myself is like, oh, it's like, this is the end. Like, this moment defines our marriage. And, like, that's just not true. It's hard, but it's not over.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I still love you. You still love me. We're still putting in effort. We're still want to make it work. Like, we still want not even like make it work. We want to thrive in our marriage because, like,
Yeah.
we're working just fine with each other, but we're not happy with where we are because we're not thriving where we are right
Yeah.
now, and we want to thrive because we've pretty much always thrived in our marriage,
Yeah.
and we know what that can be like, and we want to get
Yeah.
back there, or even better off than we were
Yeah.
before. So, I think that's the main thing is, like, throughout all the seasons, like, and anybody who's been married or in a long-term relationship would know, like, you go through kind of these dips,
Yeah.
um, and it's not over. You just have to
Yeah.
push through and work at it.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you're exactly right. Of like every mountaintop you're gonna have to come
Mhm.
down from, but every valley you're gonna come out of.
Yeah.
And I think that is like the first time you go through it, you think like, is this all? Like, is this
Yeah.
it? Is this the end?
Right.
And then when you get to the mountaintops, you're like, this needs to be the new normal, and like
Right.
neither one of those are healthy expectations.
Yeah.
So no, I agree. I think my growing pain that I've learned over the last 8 years now is that marriage isn't a business deal.
Yeah.
It's not transactional. There are
People
times,
will like teach you that sometimes though.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there are certain times, certain scenarios where it feels
Yeah.
transactional of I'm going to give you this in exchange for this. And I
Mm.
think that in certain instances that motivator is
Yeah.
healthy
Yeah.
of like I do want to have quality time and watch a movie tonight, so
Mm.
I'm going to go ahead and knock off these chores.
Right.
That's not really transactional because I'm still serving you, but
Yeah.
it feels transactional because it's like in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm doing
Right.
these things because I want this thing in return.
Right.
And I don't think that's selfish or wrong.
Right.
But there are other times in certain seasons where marriage is purely just, it's all cost with
Yeah.
no reward.
Yeah.
And anyone who's listening to this, not even marriage, just relationships in general, let somebody get sick,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
let your partner get pregnant,
Yeah.
let your partner's parents die,
Yeah. Yeah.
or any like just any scenario like that, and where when you're
They
serving
can't
someone and they
give.
can't
Yeah.
give you anything back.
Yeah.
And we always say that, right? But I
Mhm.
remember when we first got married, we had this deal, and you gotta keep in mind we got married at 19,
Yeah. We
so
had no idea.
we were a little rough around the edges, and
Yeah.
I was a very rude person.
Mhm.
I was very my family's very direct, and so I just came into it very direct.
Mhm.
My mentors that I looked up to were very direct people. And I remember we made this deal. We got married in June, and we bought our house, and you moved in, or I was living there first, and then you moved in because you wouldn't live with me before we got married.
Yeah.
But
We both agreed to that. But
yeah, yeah,
whatever.
yeah. But it was mostly you. And so anyway, you move in, and we had this deal of I do the outdoor chores, you do the indoor chores.
Mhm.
I'm mowing, weed eating, taking out the trash, things
Yeah.
like that. You are sweeping, mopping, keeping the bathrooms tidy, that kind of. And then I think laundry, we always kind of like split
Yeah.
50-50, just like whoever was thinking about it would wash their clothes or whatever. But then I remember it was like October, I think, of that year. We just gotten like first year of marriage, going into our first winter together, and I'm sitting there on the couch watching TV. The grass is dead. Like the outdoor chores outside of
Yeah.
the trash are done now. Mowing
Mhm.
season's over and all that.
Yeah.
And the
I
deck,
was I was full-time student, full-time working for the state.
Yeah. You were busy.
Yeah.
And it was too cold outside to like work on the deck or do any of the other projects we
Yeah.
had going. So I had a lot more free time. And I remember I was sitting on the couch one night and you came through and no warning or like context or anything. And you just said, hey, before I cook dinner tonight, can you unload the dishwasher for me? Or you didn't say for me. You said, can you unload the dishwasher?
Yeah.
And I kind of sat there for a second like, no, like that's not the deal we had. Like,
Yeah.
and I remember, and I wasn't even joking. I
Mhm.
remember what I said back was, well, that's odd because last time I looked, the dishwasher was inside. And you kind of just sat there for a second, like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I mean, we have this agreement, this arrangement that we have made. I guess if the dishwasher decides to move itself outside, I'll knock it out. But until then, that's not really my area. It's not really my problem. And hit play on my TV show. And I thought you were gonna rip the dishwasher out of the counter and
I
move it outside.
was about this close to doing it if you hadn't. I think
I think I caught on and was like,
yes.
maybe that was
Yeah.
maybe I should just go.
I think
move
the
it.
look on my face, I mean, it gave off like I was about to rip that dishwasher out.
Yeah.
So
for
you
sure.
were like, you know what?
I'm gonna go knock this out real
Yeah.
quick. But I just remember like that's one pretty harsh example.
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But that was just one of like, and I remember telling you like, well, it's not my fault that you made a bad business deal.
Yeah.
And then learning over the years now, like,
Yeah.
there's no such thing as a bad business deal
Right.
in marriage. Like there are just weeks where I do all the outdoor and indoor chores.
Yeah.
And like last summer when I was living at work,
Mm-hmm.
you had to mow the yard. Dang,
Yeah.
you didn't weed eat.
Yeah.
But you had to mow.
I told you, like in our freaking marriage vows, that I would
You were never
never.
gonna weed
Yeah.
eat. Yeah.
But it's true. It has changed so much over the years. Of like, there's been times that you've had to do both indoor and outdoor, and then there's
Yeah.
times I have had to do it. And I mean, it has nothing to do with like our gender. It just
Yeah.
has to do with our season of life.
Well, and I it's easy to think in my head, and I still do sometimes, like when I'm stuck doing more around the house or whatever than the usual balance that we have, and I
Mhm.
can think in my head like I'm getting the raw end of this deal right now,
Mhm.
and it's like, but it's not a deal.
Yeah.
Like this isn't like a
Yeah.
contract that we signed that this is what you'll do and this is what I'll do. Like
Yeah.
we entered into a covenant together. Like we're
Yeah.
one flesh.
Yeah.
Whatever I'm doing, you're doing. Whatever you're doing, I'm doing.
Right.
And there are times where we have to alternate that.
Yeah.
I think it's healthy to go in with like a practical plan
Yeah.
of like these are my expectations. Like
Yeah.
you said, like very clearly, I'm not going to do this
Right.
unless I just absolutely have to.
Yeah.
I really don't want to.
Yeah.
And I came back and said, that's fine. I am disgusted by the thought of dirty dishes, like
Yeah.
the food splashing on me and like the
Yeah.
dirty water. It's gross.
Yeah,
I hate
yeah.
I'll unload the dishwasher
Yeah.
100 times. I hate loading the dishwasher because
Yeah.
it's disgusting. So you communicate those
Yeah.
expectations, but at the end of the day, it's not a business deal. And whether
Yeah.
you're married or this is a relationship, dating or anything like
Yeah.
that, like just know if you're entering into that with someone, like
Yeah.
it's not a business deal. They're not just a pawn in your life.
Yeah.
Especially if you're getting serious with them and thinking about
Yeah.
marriage and those kinds of things. Like they are not a piece in your life. You are agreeing to become one
Right.
person. And so
If
serve.
yeah, it's like if the house is failing, like if it's dirty, it's not their fault or your fault. It's you both are together, not working together. Like
Yeah.
it's a combined effort. It's like we're both failing, or that our home, our family is failing
Yeah.
at this area or whatever. We need it's like we've always said, it's attacking the problem, not
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah. And there are times, especially if you're in a relationship. Well, no, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
That's gonna be a whole. We're
Yeah,
about to
yeah.
dive into a marriage episode, and I don't want to do that.
Yep.
So okay, we did marriage. You kick us into whatever category you want to go to next.
Let's see. Why don't we just go straight into relationships then?
Okay.
So what is a moment where you knew you were growing up in your relationships with others?
I think one that comes to mind first, and when we talk about relationships with others, I know we just came out of marriage. This is like friendships.
Yeah.
This is people that you know that you're definitely not in any romantic
Yeah.
sort of environment with. I think I knew I was growing in my relationships when people started caring about what I thought when I
Mhm.
didn't have any title
Yeah.
or plaque or degree or anything
Yeah, that's so good.
tied to what I was saying. So I was a pastor for several years,
Hmm.
and people would often come for advice or for prayer, for counseling or whatever. But I always felt like in the back of my mind, well, I can tell you from experience that out of the 5 years I worked at that church, the first 3 I didn't have the title pastor in front of me,
Yeah.
and almost no one could care about my opinion on anything.
Mhm.
Half the time they never even asked me.
Yeah.
And then I got that title, and all of a sudden, parents, students, volunteers, older people,
Yeah.
everyone was coming to me wanting to know, what does Pastor Eric think about this?
Yeah.
Because someone else gave me that title. And here I am now, 4 or 5 years removed from that.
Mhm.
And pastor friends that I have, or even non-pastor, just friends that I have in general, will call me and ask for hey, I'm thinking about doing this thing. What do you think?
Yeah.
And so I knew I was maturing in my relationships with others when I conducted myself in a way that
Yeah.
with no title or degree or
It
anything,
held weight.
people were like, I want to know,
Yeah.
I trust his insight on this thing. And
Mhm.
I think they could trust my insight because of the way I conducted myself, not just in front of them, but in general,
Right.
And part of that is just growing up. When you go from 20 to 28,
Yeah.
like a lot of, like, you just mature. You
Yeah.
should
Yeah.
mature a lot. And so I think I knew I was maturing when, like, even our pastor now, every now and then will call me and say, hey, I'm thinking about this idea or this illustration or this message or whatever. Do you think this is crazy?
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's never like a blanket yes or no, like, what should I do? I
Yeah.
don't have any friends that are just like that, like, you're that
Yeah.
guy. And I don't know if I want to be that guy.
Right, which I
Um,
think is why they come to you, because you're not going to be that
yeah,
person.
I'm just like, I knew I was maturing when people go, I need to talk to someone about this. Let me call Eric.
Yeah.
Not let me call Pastor Eric because
Yeah.
this pastor said that I could talk to him about whatever. Like, I don't have any of that anymore. People just want to talk to me.
Yeah.
So I knew that was kind of how I was maturing. What about you?
So I have like 2, I think. Um One is, I think, in my confidence with like my relationships with people,
Mm-hmm.
cuz I'm still really bad about it, cuz I like you'll say it, like I'll say something, or like I'll encourage someone or give them advice, and then I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so like that's still the insecure part of me, but I do have a certain level of confidence in the relationships that I've built with people,
Yeah.
to be like, I know that I have built strong enough relationships and I'm close enough with people that when they mention something that they're going through, I can very directly like ask, or like, I don't know, not like pry into that,
Mm-hmm.
but you can just get a sense for when people are bringing something up because they want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I can directly like be able to ask a question that allows them to open up about something.
Yeah.
And I've been told before, like, yeah, you kind of are pretty direct about it, but like not in a bad way.
Yeah.
I
You're not
felt
being
like it,
rude.
yeah, I felt like people were like that was like almost like a compliment of,
Yeah.
like, for example, in a group that I'm in, there's somebody struggling with a certain problem. And I was just like, I just asked in the whole group, I was like, well, is this circumstantial, or is this just you and your head? And like, I think I kind of caught like everybody off guard of
Right.
like, we don't normally like dive into that. Like, she just like brought up something that's like a pretty serious thing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it also allowed for conversation of us being able to encourage her in a
Yeah.
deeper level.
Yeah.
And I hope that doesn't sound like me being arrogant
No.
but
No.
I do feel like I've gotten a little bit of confidence over the years of being like I've grown closer in my relationships, that I know that that's maybe the nudge or the question or the
Mm-hmm.
encouragement that they needed because of the closeness and
Yeah.
the effort that I've put in relationships.
Yeah. And I think those two, I think mine and yours kind of correlate a little bit of like, you'll grow in confidence when you grow in a relationship.
Yeah.
And so to whoever's listening to this and you go like, I want to go deeper with
Yeah.
my friendships with others and like have that deeper connection where it's not so superficial all the time.
Yeah.
And I want my friends to know they can come to me.
Yeah.
One, it's how you conduct yourself all the time, not just when you're around them, because even when
Yeah.
you're not around them, they can still see your stories.
Yeah.
They can still see your posts and what you're tagged
Right.
in. When you live your life, not in a way that like it's no like self-righteousness or anything like that, but when you conduct yourself in a way that's like, I just want to be more mature.
Right.
because people want advice from mature people.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, you gain that confidence when you mature in
Mhm.
yourself, and then when you mature in yourself, you'll find the relationships you have around you, they'll either fall off because
Mhm.
you're too mature for them and they don't want to hang out anymore, or they'll mature with you.
Yeah.
And then you get to that place where you go, okay,
Yeah.
whoever we're talking to, I know we're at this point now where we can
Yeah.
talk about this. So
Yeah.
let's talk about it. And you'll have that confidence. But if you won't have that confidence if you don't have that depth, and you won't have that depth without maturity.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just won't happen.
Yeah.
And you said you had two. What's your other one?
My second one is probably gonna make me a little bit emotional, but like in a good way. Was Joe's first birthday.
Okay.
Um, I was like, we sent out the invites to all of our friends, and I know that everybody loves Joe. And obviously, they were there to support her and everything, but they also know that she's just a baby and she's
Right.
not going to remember. So, a lot of the first birthday is to come and support us and be there for us.
Right.
And when I looked out our front window and saw the line of cars parked in our driveway, and when I say we do not have a short driveway,
Yeah.
I was just like amazed at all these people that showed up for us. And I think that I would hope that it is because of some positive effect that we've had in the relationships that we've had with people over
Yeah.
the years, you know. And
Yeah.
I just thought, I don't know, it's just something that really makes me very happy and was like kind of like a big aha, or not aha moment, but like it just perfectly encapsulated like all the love that people had for us.
Yeah.
Um, Possibly because of maybe love that we've shown them in the past.
Yeah. And we were talking about this last night at rehearsal. Like, we don't live close
Yeah, yes,
to
yeah.
anyone, and so for them to be willing to make the drive,
Mess
um,
up nap times,
yeah, because we have a 1-year-old, so they have
Yeah,
little kids too. Like, yeah, it was very much like overwhelming. Of like, man,
yeah,
we've thrown parties in the past, not for our daughter, obviously, but we've thrown get-togethers in the past, and
yeah,
2, 3, 4 people show up, and they're the 4 people that have nothing else going on anyway.
yeah, yeah,
So for people to bring their kids, and that kind of thing was definitely like, wow, we have some serious relationships
yeah,
here.
yeah.
No, I think that's great. Since you brought up her birthday, we'll go into parenting.
Okay.
What's something life has taught you since becoming a mom? What's a growing pain you've had as a woman becoming a mother?
Um, I thought I was gonna go in a different direction with this, but I think I'm gonna keep going.
Okay.
I'm weak. I I didn't realize how much support I was gonna need during this time. As you know, I'm a very independent. Um,
Very.
I don't like any help. I want to do everything on my own.
Hmm.
Um, I don't like any help from anyone or anything.
Especially a man.
Yeah. So like when I had Joe and I needed help with therapy and medication, help with breastfeeding, help with nighttime feeds from you, and help financially, and help babysitting from your mom and Nana and, friends and everything.
Yeah.
And like at the beginning, I was like, no, and I kind of shut everybody out and made everything 10 times harder on us. And we were like, I don't know why we decided to do that looking back on it. But like, just, I say weak as like almost not in like a bad thing
Yeah.
of like, I think it was a very humbling
Yeah.
experience for
Yeah.
me of like, I'm I'm not this big independent woman that needed to be all of these things.
Yeah.
Like it was okay to accept help from that. Although it does hurt me a lot of the times, and I feel kind of insecure about how weak I feel in certain instances where maybe I didn't feel that in the past before being a mom. Um, but now I just tried to. It is, yeah, it's just humbling of just understanding like it does take a village, and I am very blessed um, to have the support that we have, um, and to have the amount of like I said, the therapy, the medication, the everything that I've kind of talked about in past podcasts or
Yeah.
past episodes, but it was just
Yeah.
it was a lot, like
Yeah.
there's this whole human I got to take care of, and I like don't have any idea. I
Yeah.
didn't have any like Abby, my younger sister, was 4 years younger than me, but I didn't have any cousins. I didn't hang out with. I had
Yeah.
no clue how to raise a kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So like,
And you had no parents to call for
yeah,
advice.
yeah. So
Yeah.
it was just like I don't know. It was this big thing. I wanted to do it all by myself, and then very quickly realized that that was not going to
Yeah.
happen. And
Well, I think that's why Paul wrote. I think his context was very different, but Paul writes in Second Corinthians
mm,
about his. I pulled it up right here. It says, "My grace is if this is God talking to
yeah,
Paul, and he says, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness."
yeah,
I think God shines through all the more in our lives when we're willing to admit that we're weak in an area, and I
yeah,
think we saw that in your life with like, I'm really weak right now in these areas, and God provided people
yeah,
and provision.
yeah,
But you have to be willing to go make the phone call
yeah,
and say, "Hey, I need some help,"
yeah,
and that doesn't have to be money. That can
yeah,
be just time. Hey, I need you to
yeah.
come watch her for an hour so I can sleep.
And it's so like amazing because like I think a lot of the insecurity comes from like social media of like, oh, this mom, never had postpartum and she gives her kids all organic food and everything, like and
Mm-hmm.
you struggle with like that comparison. But as far as real life people in like our life, the amount of support and encouragement that I had with moms in my life is far outweighs any of that
Yeah.
comparison on social media of I was very open of like I have no clue what I was doing, and they were like, we don't either, but
Yeah.
here's a little bit of knowledge that we do
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
Let us help you,
Yeah.
and that's also really cool.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I think my growing pain as a dad has been patience.
yeah, for
You, if
sure.
you couldn't tell from the previous stories, I've always struggled with being patient a little bit. It
Yes.
runs in my family. Um, but I remember holding Joe, especially as a newborn, and just thinking to myself, like, I love this thing so much, right? But then it revealed how selfish I was,
Yeah.
but it also revealed how impatient I was because she doesn't know, right? Like literally,
Right.
she doesn't know anything. Like
Right.
she's and even now she barely knows anything, but she's
She actually
learning.
knows way more than most 1-year-olds know, but
Yeah, but she's still learning, right?
mhm.
And I have to be patient with that. And I realized how impatient I was.
Yeah.
Um, just I mean, I don't even know how many stories I could think of like,
It
well, you how many times in the newborn phase did I tell her shut up?
yes.
And she's like 7, 8 weeks old,
Yeah.
crying because she's
Yeah.
hungry, and I'm like, can you just shut up for a second,
Yeah,
please?
you were always trying to tell me that I was spoiling her,
Yeah.
and I was like, you can't spoil a 4-week-old.
Yeah, I'm like, how'd you feeding her like every 2 hours?
Yeah.
Just freaking she's gonna be a brat.
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, she's gonna be a brat. And what that is that's me just wanting to go to sleep,
Yeah. Yeah.
or wanting to watch my show
No, it reminds me we literally just watched it. I think it was a TikTok of what is it, Nate?
Nate
Uh
Bargatze.
yeah, him
Yeah, the
talking.
shaken baby.
He's like,
Yeah.
it's so like if you're a parent, you'll understand.
Yeah,
Of
yeah, yeah.
like in the middle of the night, you're all like, "What is wrong with this baby?"
Why are you crying right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember the first probably weeks. Well, we brought her home, I think on day 4 we brought
Uh-huh.
her home. And from day 4 to like day 20,
Mhm.
we would always try and put her in the little bassinet to go to sleep,
Yeah.
and she was just fighting
Yeah.
sleep because she wouldn't sleep. Which thank God she doesn't use a pacifier now,
Yeah.
but she wouldn't sleep without her pacifier.
Mhm.
But she would spit it out,
Mhm.
and her little arms were swaddled up, so she couldn't put it back in.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I would come out here on the couch,
Mhm.
I would put a pillow on each side of me
Mhm.
and a long pillow in front of me,
Mhm.
and then we had that little like it was like a pillow that she fit perfectly into. You know what
Oh,
I'm
like
talking
my
about?
nursing pillow?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I would put a pillow on each side of me, that nursing pillow around me. I would
Mhm.
lay her in it, like
Mhm.
in my arm, and then I would take this hand. It was the pacifier that
Yeah,
like
the
your finger
blue
would go in.
hospital
Yeah.
pacifier. Yeah.
And I put that in her mouth, and I would just hold it in her mouth.
Yeah.
And she would sleep for, an hour, 2 hours, and then she'd wake up and push it out,
Mhm.
which would wake me up. I'd pop it back in. hit restart on the movie Cars because
Yeah.
it was, on the credits again.
Speed.
Yeah, and barely make it through that opening speech. But that was
Yeah.
that was the first 3 weeks of our life
Yeah.
being back home,
Yeah.
and I just remember like so grateful that she was healthy and
Yeah.
all that stuff, but also like so mad
Yeah.
and
Oh my
just
gosh, yeah. At 3 o'clock in the
impatient.
morning when you finally get her to sleep, and then like 20 minutes goes by and she starts crying again.
Yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, I did not realize how impatient I was. But it
Yeah.
also, like now, a year later, it just teaches me of like how patient God is with me
Yeah.
because like I still love her, I still
Hmm.
care about her, I still feed her 3 times a day and make sure she has a roof over her head and all that stuff. So
Yeah.
like, it just reminds me of like God, I am sorry,
Yeah.
one, but two, like thank you for being patient with me,
Yeah.
because I know what it feels like to not want to be patient.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what parenting has taught me. Let's go into, let's see, we only
Ministry.
have two more. Yeah, let's go into ministry. What is something you've learned? And we have two categories here because we've
Oh
had
yeah.
two totally different ministry existence.
Yeah.
The 5 years that we were pastors, quote unquote pastors,
Hmm.
what was something you learned?
Um. Again, I'm gonna go heavy on this one.
Let's
I.
hear it.
It's always when I say that I'm not, I do the opposite of what I say I'm gonna
Let's
do.
hear it.
Um, what I learned as a quote unquote pastor's wife is um my existence is more than just being your sexual partner.
Yeah.
Um, it was very much explained to me when we got married at a very young age, that pretty much my only job was to make sure you did not fall into sin
Right.
by giving you sex whenever you wanted.
Right.
So I was just this pretty much, just body that you could use whenever you needed to. Not that you did that
Yeah, but
specifically,
that's what
but
they were
that's
told you would
that's
be.
how I was taught. And that, as you could imagine, is kind of a very negative way to view
Yeah.
yourself.
It's a little toxic.
Yeah. And it's like was multiple people who like that
Yeah.
wasn't just one person who kind of like if you kind of go into really any kind of ministry leadership like
Mhm.
that's kind of a common reoccurrence that
Mhm.
they'll kind of teach women. And one, I'm sorry if anybody has ever heard that. That's not true.
Yeah.
But one thing that I've learned outside of that, like growing out of that, is one, that's not my goal. I'm actually far more useful in a lot of other areas.
Yeah.
Like, I actually have a brain and a sense of humor that is
Yeah.
very useful. Um, but also when I wasn't obligated to it, um, and I don't know how much we want to share on this, but the frequency and enjoyment of our sexual life went up.
Yeah.
Like it when I was just forced to do it and I was just kind of degraded as like just this person that just had to so you didn't cheat on me or
Mhm.
like lustfully look at other people in the church, I guess. Um it one takes out all the enjoyment and two it's like it just like I didn't want to
Yeah.
all the time, like I basically just waited for you to tell me when the time was in
Yeah.
need. Um, so it just like, but like I think when I realized my worth
Mhm.
outside of that, it actually worked out that that's the way that it was supposed to be in the end. Like the frequency, the need, it all kind of like
Yeah.
just went the way that it was supposed to, and no one had to tell me that that's like it wasn't out of obligation. It was just like God ordained at that
Yeah.
point, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and two things. One, like you said, to any wife or pastor's wife that's heard this,
Yeah.
one, if your husband cheats on you, that is not your fault.
Yeah.
Like, I get so sick of hearing that all the time of, like, I fell into sin, and everyone's like, well, I bet you his wife wasn't giving him enough sex. That's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not saying that couldn't play a part
Yeah.
in, like, his mental state of, like, struggling,
Right.
you know? I'm not, but that's in
Right.
no way does
If
that
you
put
guys
any.
aren't connected in that area, yeah, I
Yeah,
could
because
imagine.
it's one thing
Yeah.
if you're just, like, not having sex as frequently, but you still feel close with your partner.
Yeah.
Versus we're having sex all the time, but we don't like each other.
Yeah.
You know, like so. Just whoever's listening to this, if you've been cheated on,
Yeah.
it is not your fault that
Yeah.
that you were cheated on. You know, I think that's stupid. I think
Yeah.
that's a lie. And I think it's just a cop out excuse
Yeah.
for men in particular to be gross, you
Yeah.
know, and inappropriate. But two, you talked about like your worth.
Yeah.
I think that it does limit a lot of women in what they think they're worth, but also like you're not so and so's wife only.
Yeah.
And that was what a lot of people would say is like, here's Pastor
Yeah.
Eric and here's Amanda, his wife.
Yeah.
And it's like,
That's a good way to put it.
no, Amanda is so much more than just
Yeah.
a pastor's wife. And I see like people on Instagram, like
Yeah.
their bio says at so and so church, Pastor so and so's wife.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, you're a mom, but
Yeah.
then you were a student, you were a
Yeah.
career woman, you were a friend to a lot of people, you were
Yeah.
smart, you were funny, you were talented, you're an artist.
Yeah.
But as far as the church ever cared, you were Pastor Eric's wife.
Yeah.
And your job was to help keep me in line.
Yeah.
You know? And
Yeah.
it's like, you're so much more than that. And,
Yeah.
and to whoever's listening, like, you're so much more. And even forget pastor, just in
Yeah.
general, you are so much more than someone else's wife or someone else's mom or
Yeah.
whatever. I would imagine most of us, the first 18, 20, 25 years we were on the earth, we
Yeah.
weren't any of those things, and we did just fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, you're more. Joe is more than someone's future wife.
Right.
So that's very limiting, I think,
Yeah.
when we think of it that way.
Yeah.
I think my thing that I learned through my 5 years as a pastor, particularly we were youth pastors, Christian kids are still kids.
Yeah.
Christian teenagers are still teenagers. And we had this mindset, or at least I know I did, of like, Christian kids just need to act different. They just need
Yeah.
to be different. And I do think in certain scenarios you should be different,
Yeah.
you know, especially like around temptation or like self-discipline, like things like that. But at the end of the day, kids are still kids. Teenagers are still teenagers. And I remember when I had just taken over the youth group as the lead youth pastor, I think it was like week 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone who knew me at the time knew I cared about, this is going to sound dumb, but I cared about my shoes.
Yes.
Like, I didn't really care much about fashion in general, but I always had some bomb shoes on.
Yeah.
They were clean, they were fresh, they always looked good.
Yeah.
That was my thing.
And we're not talking about like cool Nikes.
No. The church we were at, it was like not really dress, I guess kind of like dress shoes, but not like shiny dress shoes, but whatever. Like Clarks and things like that.
Yeah.
And I had these brand new pair of white wingtip, like
Yeah.
those things were, they were white suede. They were beautiful. Rocking that with some khakis.
Why you would ever wear those to a Wednesday night youth group?
Yeah,
I
but
don't
that's
know.
what we were.
Yeah.
There was one point we were wearing suits and ties.
Yeah, I do remember. that, yeah.
Which was stupid. But
Yeah.
anyway, and then one of our lead students comes up and wants to step on him. Tells me he's going to step on my shoes and like make them dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Hey man," and again, not very patient, not very kind.
Yeah.
I was like, "We're not gonna do that."
Right.
And long story short, he proceeds to try and step on my shoes. He successfully stepped on one of them.
Yeah.
To which I pushed him, like,
Yes.
just, hey, get away from me.
Yeah.
And he stepped back. He was like a sophomore, I think,
Yeah.
in high school. Stepped back into my face, and I said, "What are you gonna do?"
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he pushed me. I think he went to step on it again,
Mm-hmm.
and I grabbed him and flipped him over my leg onto the floor. And like it wasn't in service, but it was like right after service.
Yeah.
We were all hanging out.
Or it might
And
have been before. I can't remember.
And I flipped him over my leg, and he landed on his stomach on the ground. And I pushed.
I think
like,
it was onto a table.
Well, no. I remember because that was the second thing.
Oh.
I pushed him because then I like held him down on the ground, and I said, "You're gonna stop doing that."
Yeah.
And I let go of him, and I said, "You're pissing me off," which piss is like
Yeah. You don't
hit or
yeah.
miss.
Yeah.
And when I let go, he stood up and he went chest to chest with me,
Mm-hmm.
and I pushed him. And that was when I pushed him that third time. He went backwards and hit like one of the kids' tables,
Yeah.
and slid across it and flipped off the other side,
Yeah.
and like landed between the table and the wall.
Yeah.
And I look around, all the volunteers, all the students, everyone is staring at me. And I just grabbed my Bible and left and
Yeah.
went out into the parking lot.
Yeah.
And
I was mad.
I remember like thinking immediately, like, I'm fired. I just threw
Yeah.
this kid. I hip checked him and then threw him across the table.
Yeah.
You came out there. You were pretty mad at me.
Yeah.
To get my emotions in check. And so anyway, I just remember like now as an adult, I'm like, he wasn't sinning.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was just a teenager being a teenage boy.
Yeah.
Like, it was my fault for wearing fancy shoes to a youth service.
Yeah.
One, but two, like. That one example taught me, like, no matter how saved or how righteous we want them to be, like, your kids and your teenagers are still just normal kids and teenagers.
Yeah, they're
so
gonna
like
push boundaries.
let them a little
Yeah.
bit, like really, really consciously think about, like, is he sinning right now or is he just annoying me?
Yeah. Yeah.
And don't try and correct annoyances.
Yeah.
Try and correct sins. Like if you're in ministry like that, like
Yeah.
kids we're still kids. And then I
Yeah,
think
and I think you also have to remind yourself, like, one, like, it wasn't okay that he did that too, but you were also, I think, only 19 at the time. So you were just a kid too.
Yeah.
Like, you were acting out of emotions and
Yeah.
arrogance, and like you were just kind of wanting to rough and tough, and like just as
Yeah.
like, I mean, he was 15 or
Yeah.
14, like you guys, although yes, kind of an age gap, but kind of still in the same area of life.
Yeah, I remember that same kid. I open hand slapped him in the parking lot. Like a month later, we were roughhousing out in the parking lot, and I forget I think we were playing with football or something. And he reached up and took a swing like a punch, and he missed. And I reached back and open hand slapped him right on the face.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was just me and him out there. Like other kids had been coming and going, but nobody was playing. And I look over, and the piano player, like our 80-year-old piano player, was just staring at us. And I was like, oh, man. So I immediately went inside and told his dad, like, hey, you're going to hear this story.
Yeah, yeah.
I did slap him. This
Yeah.
is what's going on. But anyway. And then I think, man, is she awake already?
Yeah. But give her a second.
I think the other thing I learned now, not as being a pastor, but being a quote-unquote just church goer
Mm-hmm.
for the last 4 years now, ministry rarely happens just at the church.
Can I get an amen?
Like on Sunday morning, Wednesday nights, like, yeah, ministry happens. We worship, we hear the word, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But like practical life application very rarely happens in those moments. The story that comes to mind, and if some of our friends might be able to piece together who I'm talking about, but I'm not going to use any names. But a friend of mine hit me up, and this is a couple of years ago, and he was like, hey, I'm headed down to Florida. Like he would go down to Florida every week to go work at this church, but he lived here in Nashville. And he was constantly inviting us to go down. And so finally I got my schedule cleared up or whatever, and I was able to go. And I said, all right, like we're going down. And he said, all right, when we get there, we're staying with my buddy who lives there. Every weekend I always bring a friend. And because he preaches on Sunday morning, Saturday night, he goes to bed like super early.
Yeah.
And so he goes, we're going to get down there Friday, clean the church. We'll all hang out Friday night. Saturday, we'll hang out all day. And then Saturday night, I'm going to go to bed. And me and his roommate, the other guy, will go out to dinner. And he goes, my buddy, my roommate, he, every weekend, whoever my guest is, he always takes them out, shows them the town, like they have a good time or like whatever. So I'm linking like
vacation,
a weekend at the beach with my friend and this new guy that I don't really know very well. I've met him a couple times, but we're going to hang out.
Yeah.
And then he's going to go to bed, and me and this new guy, like I'm going to make a new friend. We're going to have a great night at the beach, you know, whatever. And we get down there, hang out Friday. Everything's good. We all go to dinner Friday night, have a great time, you know, staying out late, just hanging out. Saturday morning, me and my buddy who I went there with got up, ran to the church to do a couple things, and we come back to his apartment, and dude's standing there just like 1,000-yard stare, like the universe has opened up. And we're like, hey, man, what's up? And he just goes, just got a phone call that she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even know who she is. Like, I don't know anything that's going on.
Yeah.
Long story short, that night, what was supposed to be a night out on the town with me and this new friend, we went to the local barbecue restaurant, and I just basically tried to cheer him up.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't his wife. And so in that culture, like...
He wasn't married.
Yeah, he wasn't married yet.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I know you're probably going to lose your job at the church.
Yeah.
It's going to come out in the next 9 months.
Yes.
Everyone's going to know. Like, so you don't really have long... Like, all these different stressors.
Right.
And I just remember leaving that vacation, like... I did more ministry. Like, I showed up just for a vacation, and I did more ministry for this dude than I don't even know him. You know, so like that, and then He ended up moving to Nashville with us.
Yeah.
Got him a job. He worked with me for a little bit. Lived with the other guy.
Yeah.
And now he's married. Their baby's healthy and great.
The
They're
cutest
serving the
thing
Lord.
ever.
All these amazing things.
Yeah.
Not a single bit of any of that
Yeah.
happened on a Sunday morning or
Yeah.
a Wednesday night in a sanctuary. It was just us doing life together.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I've learned as a churchgoer and like to the pastors out there, bro, your Sunday morning or Wednesday night is not anywhere near as important
Yeah.
as taking someone to dinner,
Right.
calling them on a Saturday morning and checking on them. Like that is so much bigger
Yeah.
than constantly just working on your sermon and hanging
Yeah.
out at coffee shops. Go where your people are.
Yeah.
Most of ministry doesn't happen at
Yeah.
the church.
Be
I
a
think
good
that's what
friend.
I've learned.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, mine is kind of like going back to my other example, and into that is like when I learned to just be like genuine and not just doing things out of obligation
Yeah.
of like I mean, when I was the pastor's wife, like I was at the church 4 days a week because I had to be at every Bible study, and I had to, lead this, and I had to, be at Wednesday night service and Sunday, and, all of the things, I just freaking just drained myself just because I felt the need to, or the pressure
Yeah.
from other people to. And I don't feel like really, I mean, I'm sure God used a lot of it, but I don't know if I accomplished as much as I did in the past 4 years afterwards, when I said, and this is kind of what we talked about in our last episode of, I say no to a lot more things that I'm not passionate about. And although that might seem selfish, I have a lot more energy and care and love into the things that I do now.
Yeah.
So it's, I guess, not really that selfish,
Yeah.
and it's so much more genuine,
Yeah.
and I think a lot more ministry gets done in those areas of my life because people feel it. They know that I'm not showing up to an event
Yeah.
or going to that lunch or texting you because I have to. They know that I'm doing it because I want to and I love you.
Yeah, and I think too, right along that, to anyone listening, like if you're in that place right now where you're doing it out of obligation, they know.
Yeah.
People know.
They feel it.
They feel it. And so you wonder why you send the text and no one responds.
Yeah.
Why you put the invite out there and nobody shows up.
Yeah.
They know. They're not stupid.
Yeah. Or you get the one word response. Or,
yeah.
Yeah.
There's no genuine relationship there. And so, you're exactly right. And I think even Jesus modeled that, where he impacted everyone on the earth at the time he was alive, just about, but he had 12 friends.
Yeah.
Crowds of thousands would come listen to him, but he ultimately left with his 12 friends.
Yeah.
So I think even Jesus' life models pick a few friends, pour into them,
Yeah.
and be impactful that way
Yeah.
than to have 1,000 relationships that are all surface
Yeah.
level. Yeah, no, I think that's great. And then speaking of Jesus, that's our last category.
Yeah.
What are some growing pains that you've had in your walk with Christ?
Mine was, and this is probably going to hit a little bit heavier than I originally anticipated because I'm a little bit more emotional about this today than I originally thought I would be. But yesterday marked 4 years of Dad passing away. And for some reason, when I woke up yesterday, I really wasn't emotional about it at all. And then I woke up this morning, like bawling my eyes out about it. And I think that one, just grief is weird, and that's how it works sometimes. But two, like my growing pains in my relationship with God was like after they passed, I think I was very humbled at how shallow my relationship with God was. Of like, I think a lot of people tried to force me to hate or be mad at God for like, why did you take him? I never had that experience. I think a lot of people, like, that's very valid when something like that happens. But that just, I cannot, like, that just didn't happen for me.
With you, yeah.
I just disassociated. that part of it, because anytime I thought about God or heaven, I just was reminded that they're not here on earth anymore.
Yeah.
And that got me emotional, and I just chose not to read my Bible or talk to God or think about it. And I think that was almost too easy to do because my relationship with
Yeah.
God was shallow enough. And honestly, if I can be real about it, I think it's could still even be that way today.
Yeah.
In some areas, like there's some days that I feel like it's really strong, and there's some days that I feel like I could go 3, 4, 5 months without talking to God or reading my Bible
Yeah.
because it's not this grand thing that I sometimes make it out to be or think that
Yeah.
it is,
Yeah.
So I think that it was just a reality check for me of like, it really was that easy for you to just be like, okay, it's not that I don't love you. It's not that I don't believe in you. It's not that I'm even mad at you.
Right.
I just don't care to talk to you or
Yeah.
to think about you.
I think when you tell me that story, I think of there's an old gentleman at the last church we attended. I won't use his name, but he was a very well-known older gentleman at our church. Came out to our house one time to do a led our Bible study.
Mm-hmm.
But he has been, he's got to be almost 90 now. Been preaching his entire life just about. In and out of jails all over the world. Like
Yeah.
he was just an old-fashioned preacher, and he would pray for like 20 minutes at a time,
Mhm.
just this super. And I remember asking him one day, he came and taught the college ministry that we ran one night, and I just kind of had him share his testimony and that sort of thing. And I remember afterwards, I said, man, you and Jesus are like, I want to have that,
Yeah.
where you guys are just like always in communion and like nothing could separate you guys. And he said a lot of things. But the one thing he said that stuck out to me the most was he said, I love the Lord with all my heart. He said, but I met him a little too late in life. And so I don't have a great relationship with my kids like I hoped I would.
Yeah.
He said, but as much as I love the Lord, I don't know if I could get past if he let anything happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there, and it was just me and him, like,
Yeah.
eating pizza together. And I remember thinking, like, but you're the guy. Like, you're
Yeah.
the guy everyone wants to be like. And he said, yeah, like, that's honoring or whatever. He said, but I love Jesus more than anything. But if he let something happen to my daughters,
Yeah.
I don't know if I could
Yeah.
continue to serve him.
Yeah.
And just that honesty of, like, and he told me, he said, like, I want to say that I could.
Yeah.
But
I honestly
he
just,
said, that's a hurt I don't know how to handle.
Yeah.
He
It's-
said, I've done weddings, funerals, and everything, and doing kid funeral. And I know that's kind of like a heavier,
Yeah.
morbid thing. But going back to what you were saying, like,
yeah.
I love Jesus more than anything. But then my parents both passed away. And it's
Mhm.
not really that I was mad at you.
Yeah.
But, like, now I'm kind of indifferent towards
Yeah.
you. And it's how quickly that can happen
Yeah.
when big life things happen.
Yeah.
How easily it is to just become not anti-Jesus, but just indifferent. Like,
Yeah.
okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think my growing pain that I've seen the most with Jesus, and it kind of ties into like what we were talking about earlier with friendships, is just self-accountability
Mm-hmm.
and discipline, which I'm a very undisciplined person. I'm sipping pink lemonade at 10 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? I wanted to make cupcakes on a weeknight last night just because it was like, cupcakes sound good, So I'm a very, I'm working on that. But there are
You're
certain
just
areas.
enjoying life.
Yeah, there are certain areas in my walk with God that I'm like, it's been a growing pain when I read the Bible and I see what it says,
Yeah.
and I can't deny what it says, and so then I have to adjust my life accordingly.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's easier. I feel like it's easier on the big things than it is on the little things,
Yeah.
to be honest. But like some of the examples I wrote down was like, we have some friends in our group, in our old group of friends, and even in our current group of friends who enjoy going out and drinking and kind of doing like the light party scene, if you
Yeah.
will. And I'm not faulting them for that at all. That's between them and the Lord.
Yeah.
But I know when I read the Bible, Jesus very clearly said to not be drunk.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to get into this whole like, should we drink at all or not?
Yeah.
But I know that the friends that I was running around with, every time they would go casual drinking, they would get drunk.
Yeah.
And I remember like feeling in my heart like this is not, God doesn't want us to be doing this.
Yeah.
And so it was a growing pain for me in Jesus because, like, literally it's in the name, growing pain. Like
Yeah.
it's good that you're growing, but it also hurts
Yeah.
while you're doing it.
Yeah.
And I remember like having to tell friends no, like
Yeah.
not because I'm better than you or anything like that, but it also says in the book of James, it's a sin to know what you ought to do
Yeah.
and then not do it. And I knew in my heart and in my spirit, God was telling me, don't go to this thing.
Yeah.
Even so much that like now, I say now, recently, like when they'll go out, they even know, like I had one guy try and invite me out the other day, and mid invite he just stopped and he goes, "You're not really interested, are you?"
Mm-hmm.
And like he's not wrong.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to go. But I'd be a lie if I said I wasn't interested.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
want to go. I can't go
Yeah.
because me and Jesus and that was a growing pain for me
Yeah.
to be like, I really want to do this thing,
Yeah.
but I can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I feel like I'm growing and maturing as I continue to be
Yeah.
more disciplined. But being more disciplined sometimes means telling all your friends no and then hearing
Yeah.
the funny stories later
Yeah.
that you wish you could have seen,
Yeah.
but you didn't. And that's one example, but like one that I'm working on in my own life right now. I just read in Ephesians the other day where Paul says to not have inappropriate joking amongst
Yeah.
you. And I'm like,
Dang.
man,
Mine is my mouth. I gotta watch.
for
like,
real.
Yeah.
Mine too, though. But like, like those are all examples of,
Yeah.
and I don't think Jesus expects us to get it all right overnight.
Yeah.
But those are growing pains.
Yeah.
But kind of going back to that relationship thing earlier, when you do work on those things, people will go, oh man, this person's like trying to.
Yeah.
My friends who do go drink, whenever they get drunk and make mistakes, they know they can call me.
Yeah.
To help them navigate whatever mistake they've made
Yeah.
or what have you. And so that's just been one example of like a growing pain with Jesus. Is
Yeah.
like, God, help me to be more like you. And then when he does, and that means telling your friends no,
Yeah.
you have to be okay with like,
Yeah.
I might be the only one sitting at home alone tonight.
Yeah.
So anyway, I feel like that was somewhat lighthearted, maybe a little heavier in some areas.
And I'm sorry because like I think
it
I
was
was
your idea to be
yeah.
lighthearted, and then you
But-
curveballed me.
I have some questions that I think can get us back.
Okay, let's hear them.
Funniest ministry moments. I can't speak apparently. Funniest ministry moments.
You want to try one more time? Try one more-
Funniest ministry moments.
Okay. Man, I jotted down a couple here in my notes. I might say them all. I might not. The one that came to mind first was a student of ours.
Was going to be mine too.
I love him so much. I won't use his name, but he was so funny. I made the mistake as a youth pastor of constantly doing like Q&As.
Yeah,
at
like
the end of the
open-ended
message,
questions.
like, hey guys, does
Yeah.
anyone have any, like in small group time,
Yeah.
like, does anyone have any questions? And I remember one night we were preaching through the book of James,
Uh-huh.
and I said, does anyone have any questions? And this kid raised his hand, and I said, hey, what's up?
Yeah.
And he said, I got a question. If Noah's family was the only family on the ark, that mean brothers and sisters have sex with each other?
Yeah.
And I hadn't referenced Noah in months. And I
don't
was
know
just
if
like,
we've ever talked about Noah.
I'm just sitting there like, well, one, I'm glad that you clearly listened to the message that I taught.
He had been saving that one.
But two, yeah, it
That's
was
all
like,
he could think about.
It was like, what in the world is this? Or one time I was talking about how God forgives us of our sins when we confess them to him.
Yeah.
And I said, so if you're even if it's something in your private life, like if you're
Mhm.
struggling with your thoughts or
Yeah.
accountability or like whatever your thing is, and he goes, yeah, like I tried to drown my neighbor. He came over the other day and filled up the bathtub and put him in there. I tried to hold him underwater. And he said it just casually, and we were all like, what? And then he goes, oh, wait, no, never mind. It was just like, what are you? And I'm sitting here trying to lead, and I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, cool.
Yeah, I love it. It was so funny.
Another one I wrote down was the youth camp we did in summer of 2019. Night one, I was leading I was the boys' like cabin room leader,
Mhm.
and our youth group was still small enough, and those rooms were huge. We were able to all stay in the one room, all the
Mhm.
boys were, and they wanted to play dodgeball.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find any dodgeballs, but I found a couple basketballs.
Yeah.
And so I let him play dodgeball with basketballs.
Yeah.
And this kid came up to us, a little sixth grader. It was his first youth group.
So cute.
He'd been there like maybe a month. His
Yeah.
older brother was the kid I fought.
Yeah.
And so he comes up to me and he goes, Pastor Eric, my thumb is hurting really bad. And I said, well, let me see it. And he shows it to me, and it's like red and swollen a little bit. And I said, what happened? And he got hit with a basketball in
Mhm.
dodgeball. And he said his thumb bent all the way backwards. And I was like, cool, can you move it? Because that's a good like indicator if your finger's broken, you
Mhm.
shouldn't be able to move it, or at least not much. and this kid couldn't move his thumb at all.
For sure broken.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, there's nothing you can do about like a
Yeah.
broken. Like, there's just no. Okay, put it in a cast or whatever. So I went. I sent him to one of our female, like kind of our mom of the group, the older volunteer, and she held him while he cried for a minute or whatever. Like 2 days later, we're still at camp, and he comes up, and I'm like, let me see that thumb, and it's like blue and purple and everything else, and he goes, do you think it's okay? And I was like, yeah, buddy, you're all right. And because, like, what can I do,
I don't know. Send him to the hospital.
Yeah, I didn't want to do. I was trying to have a good time. So I told him he was fine. And then when we got back, I told his dad. I said, "Hey, I'm not entirely sure that his finger might not be broken." And his dad was just like, "What can you do about broken fingers?" And put him in there. So he spent that whole youth camp with a broken thumb.
Poor kid.
Let's see. What about you? What are some funny ones that come into your mind?
Oh, I had to lead a women's conference, and no men were allowed, like not even for like any volunteer, like
Yeah.
behind the scenes, but like last minute we needed help for like running the sound,
Yep.
and you were all
The
like,
sound booth.
I volunteer as tribute
Yep.
because
Y'all had Chick-fil-A for breakfast.
yeah, and one thing you got to know about Eric, he loves flirting with old ladies.
Guilty.
He loves the attention
Guilty.
older ladies give him. So
And older ladies love the attention I give them too.
yes,
Let's get that
yeah.
straight.
What is it that you say? You have a gift of
Affirming the gifts of other women.
yes, yeah.
We'll get into that story another day, but that's true.
Yes.
Um,
So I look up at one point, didn't even know you were supposed to be there, and there's just a herd of women surrounding this person, and I look up, and it's Eric, and he's just like, like just flirting, hugging, and they're just like eating it up, and I'm like, what is he even doing here?
I remember the other lady running the event came over and grabbed me by the collar and yelled at me to get back in the sound booth and shut up.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wow, I was just saying hi to some of the ladies I recognized,"
Yeah.
and they were not having any of
No.
that. But I was working the room that day. Do you remember when our volunteers, that same camp, that kid broke his thumb? Do you remember when that volunteer's car caught on fire? We were running the entourage down
Yeah.
I-40, and I look
Yeah.
back and the tail car is no longer on the back. So I call her and I'm like, "Hey, did you pull off for gas? Like, we got to stay together. Is everything okay?" And she wasn't answering, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What in the world?" And the next thing I know, car number 3 broke off,
Mm-hmm.
and so I called her, and she answered. And I said, "What are you doing?" She goes, "I got to go back to who was driving the other car. She says it's on fire." And I was like, "Oh God, here we go. Someone's being dramatic or whatever."
Yeah.
And then she sends me a picture, and it is from bumper to bumper, fully engulfed in flames.
Yeah,
And I'm
like-
like, "Well, did she get out of the car? Like, is everyone okay?" And she goes,
Yeah.
"Yeah, everything was fine. We all got out of the car." She said, "I was driving, and I noticed my feet were getting kind of warm, and I looked down, and like smoke was coming through the floorboard. So I thought that was kind of odd, and I pulled over, and about 90 seconds later, the whole car."
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was not prepared for this. Of all
Yeah.
the things I thought was going to happen today, a volunteer's car burning to the ground.
Yeah. So many kids lost so much stuff, and
We lost, I think, 15 loaves of bread and like 30 packs of hamburger
Yeah,
buns, which
like-
is expensive.
Okay, but kids lost like important things. Like I know like a girl lost a Bible that her like deceased father gave her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
That one was
okay.
unfortunate.
Uh,
I do
Sam,
remember that. She was
or
quite upset about it.
the girl, sorry, I just her car, her whole car. I
Yeah.
remember we were literally leaving the church, and I was like, I for some reason made the joke, "You got full coverage insurance?" I can't talk. "You got full coverage insurance?" And she was like, "Yeah, ha ha ha."
Boom. Car caught on fire. We were so late that day, too.
Yeah.
No, I think, and I've got so many more. I think the last one I'll tell is the kids' camp that I got invited
Yeah.
to speak at. Me and the pastor I was working for at the time, we got invited to come talk to this all kids like summer camp.
Yeah.
And we were told going in, it was kindergarten through 5th grade, and we specifically were going to have 3rd and 4th grade. And so it was like a week before Christmas. So they said, "Hey, we just want you guys to come in. It's like a 30-minute session. Tell them the Christmas story, like however you want to do it. We don't care." He said each group will have about 100 to 150, which is a lot of kids,
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I got to make it quick, like under 10 minutes, boom, boom, boom. Let's try and make it funny, try and make it
Yeah.
whatever. And we were told that it was going to be all boys, which is why we got asked to come speak. And so I was like, dude, this gold mine. Are you kidding me? 4th grade boys. I got hype
Yeah.
these kids up about Christmas. We talk about trucks and
Yeah.
fireworks and
Yeah.
guns or whatever.
I don't
And
know how you pulled that into the Christmas story.
yeah, I don't know. We figured it out. And we show up, and me and the dude pull into the parking lot, and we notice this like minivan full of young girls goes running into the auditorium, and we're like, well, that's odd, but maybe they're like, the campgrounds were massive, so maybe it was just like whatever. And we go to walk in, and we walk into the auditorium, and it's all girls.
Mm-hmm.
And we look over at our buddy, the camp director, and he goes, hey guys, y'all ready to go? And we're like, yeah, what room are we preaching in? And he's like, it's this one right here. And we were like, oh, where's where my boys at?
Yeah.
You know? And he goes, oh, I guess no one confirmed with you guys. We got a scheduling conflict. This is the girls' week. And I look over at the other dude, and I'm like, we are not prepared for this.
No.
All my notes are boy related.
Yes. Yeah.
And for two people who had been publicly speaking for years, like, we weren't the best, but we were definitely comfortable and pretty crafty. Both of us flopped our way through. I think I was up there for like 6.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Janky read the Bible or the Luke 2, Christmas story, and then was like, all right, we'll see you guys later. Like, it was absolutely awful. And I got the 3rd grade group.
You're all like, you guys like makeup?
Yeah. I remember I said, what do you guys want for Christmas? And the first girl raised her hand and said, I want my birth mom to love me.
Of course.
And I was like,
they knew you guys were uncomfortable.
and I remember just standing there, and I was like, oh, wow. Wow. And then the next girl was like, world peace. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I got my wife a dog. And they were like,
okay.
all right. That's cool.
What about world peace?
Yeah. And so I was just like, all right. All right.
That's so funny.
That one was rough. Well, okay, let's see. Here's another funny one for you. What are some we're on episode 6 now. In the first 5 episodes, what are some things that maybe you want to address with our listeners that they've either seen or heard or whatever about our podcast?
Well, going into the fact that I've just stumbled in all of my words, that's not even a phrase. I just continue to make up stuff. I make up words.
Your dates are never right.
They're never right. I accidentally say people's names. I blank halfway through when I'm trying to say, especially if it's an uncomfortable topic.
Yep.
My dates are never right. Make up words, make up phrases.
Yep.
And I'm sorry.
No.
This is why.
This is part of
I'm surprised you picked me.
It's a lot of editing on the back end, but we get it done. What about your other one we have on our notes here for you?
If anybody is ever watching, especially like TikToks and everything, you have probably noticed I have orange hands.
It's self-tanner.
I mean, as you can tell by how tan I am, it's definitely all the self-tanner I use. No, I have a skin condition it's genetic, that I grow extra layers of skin on my hands, and it makes them look orange. And you can definitely tell when Eric's in editing and I'm talking with my hands how different it looks compared to my very tan skin that I have. So I just needed to address it.
Yeah. I think the only thing with the podcast that I would address, if you guys ever see me on camera looking around, it's not that I do have a little bit of ADD or ADHD. I don't know what they call it anymore. But there is no production crew here. It's just us and our phones and a laptop. And so if you ever see us like kind of either one of us kind of doing this number, it's to make sure that the cameras are still going, the mics are still working. We had to re-record episode 1 4 times before it aired. And we really don't like to re-record as much as possible.
I'm checking the baby monitor a lot.
And so if you ever see us looking around, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
And then 2, your boy here has unbelievable allergies, like you wouldn't believe. I take 4 allergy pills a day to try and combat this. So if you ever see me like doing this number,
and they won't just prescribe them. They tried.
It's dust or dog hair. We have an indoor dog, and so like if I sniffle too hard, I'll get a dog hair like in the tip of my nose, and so I'm always trying to like get the dust bunnies and the dust particles and stuff out of my nose. So that's what you're seeing there. Last thing, and then we'll close this out.
Oh, something about you, like.
Yeah, tell us something.
Like something that you want the people to know, or a funny fact, something that like maybe they don't know about you.
Mine is easy.
Yeah.
I am a simple man. And when I say that, everyone's like, oh, yeah, men are... No. Listen to what I'm telling you right now. I need a few things in life. I need you and Joe.
In a really nice car.
I do like cars. Sports. I like sports.
Mm-hmm.
And I like Chili's.
Yes.
I quite literally have the Chili's logo tattooed on my thigh.
Shout out to Chili's.
Thank you, Chili's, for your unpaid support. If you would like to sponsor an episode, please let us know. Send us a DM, email.
Yes.
We'd love to get in contact with you. But I do have the Chili's logo, copyright infringement, tattooed on my right thigh. By you. Bootleg tattoos. But yeah, I'm a simple man. Give me some Chili's, a good football game, and my wife and my daughter, and I do not need big house, fancy car. I don't need any of that.
You do need the fancy car.
I like a fancy car, but I don't need it. What's something you would want our listeners to know about you?
You would just put down Amanda answer, and I still don't have an answer. So a random fact that I can just share with the people. I don't have anything like specific that like, oh, this is just something that I want you to know. But like always a funny story that like catches people off guard other than I have orange hands. Is because I was raised by a police officer, SWAT team commander. This is always so fun. I got to be involved in a lot of like SWAT team drills.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was 12 when this happened. I can't remember. I was pretty young. I have been flashbanged. So I know what it's like to be to be flashbanged. It's not a fun experience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just for all of like your Call of Duty people out there.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's like.
Yeah, you quite literally. I remember one of our first dates, you tasered me.
Yeah.
Or stun gunned me, whatever it is.
No, I think it was just a taser.
Yeah, just a taser.
I think you came over and I was throwing knives in my backyard.
Yeah, you were throwing knives and tomahawks, and you were like, hey, any man I'm going to date needs to be able to know what this feels like and then tase me.
Yeah, I know how to clean basically any gun that you hand me. I used to know. It's been a minute since I've done it. So
very, very catch you off guard for sure. She has a full-sized katana, a replica from Michonne that she just brought over one day.
Yeah.
So no, pretty cool. Pretty cool.
But
no, I think that's it. I want to thank you guys for listening today, listening to us ramble here at the end for a minute. But ultimately, we titled this episode Growing Pains because growing is always painful.
Mm-hmm.
Our daughter right now is 13 months old. She can't stay a baby forever.
Mm-hmm.
But as she gets bigger, she cries because it hurts. But that's part of maturing. That's part of growing up, not just physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well. And so hope these stories are relatable in some way. We'd love to hear your funny stories or your cool stories or your deep stories so that we can be praying for you. We'd love to hear from you, reach out to you. We'd love for you guys to reach out to us. So every way to get a hold of us will be in the comments below, in the description, all that kind of stuff. But follow, subscribe, check out the merch shop, share. I think that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely one thing I want to shout out is go ahead and be sending in your questions to us because here in a couple weeks we are going to do an episode that's just Q&A from our audience. We've had a couple already, but just live. I don't know how to say live. We're not going to go live, but we'll
please don't
bring out the notes. They'll be totally anonymous, but we just want to make sure that as we continue to pray and make content, we also want to make sure that we're reaching a very specific. So if you have a specific question that maybe we haven't addressed yet, or a topic you just want to hear us talk about, we'd love to hear from you. So follow, subscribe, and we will talk to you guys in 2 weeks. Peace.